What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. It is Friday morning, and I wanted to wait and kind of talk about some of these confirmed roster changes once the rosters got fully kind of revealed and there's no more changes. Because I want to kind of talk you through sort of my grade on the change. Once we get all the roster changes in, probably over the course of the next few days, I'm going to do a tier list video and kind of rank all of them. But Boston's the first team I want to start off with. Since we've gotten a bunch of confirmed changes around the Boston camp, let's dive in, take a look at the player changes, the coaching staff changes. My thoughts on if this is really going to help Boston get out of that 12th spot in the league and try and qualify for champs or maybe win an event this season. So this is Boston's record this season. You see they are 5-12 in matches, sitting on 50 points, which if we go over to the tracker tab on my guy Turtle sheet, you see here the standings, you know, not great. They've gotten 0 points on land. They've won 0 series on land, and they are currently bottom of the standings by 25 points. Carolina is currently in that 8th spot, but it's really close to the next two teams after. Miami is bad as they played only 5 out. Seattle only 5 out. Thieves 15 back, and then Boston's in last. So Boston's got a lot of work here to do to kind of jump frog, leap a bunch of these teams here if they want to go to champs, which I think would be a massive disappointment for this org. They've really gone backwards from what they've come in the league. And I think in particular this season, if you look at sort of the win-loss records here, they've got some hardpoint maps that have been kind and decent to them. They were one of the teams that were decent at Terminal at the beginning of the year, but obviously that map is gone. They're a good sub-base team, but you see the rest of the maps other than Invasion, it's a mixed bag. Control, same thing, sort of a mixed bag, although they do play most of the maps. But you see the biggest weakness. It's very obvious when you look at these stats. 6-17 in Search, and really the 0-2 on High Rise, 0-6 on Invasion, 0-1 on Rio. You have 3 maps here combined 0-9 in matches is just really not ideal. And I mean, we can go through like the stats in particular, right? When it comes to S&D, they're one of the worst teams in the league in getting first bloods. They're one of the worst teams in the league, and then closing out those rounds when they get first bloods. They're one of the worst teams in the league, if not the worst team in the league, in winning offense. It's 34%. It's pathetic, by the way. They play a lot of Invasion, so I think that's kind of driving a bunch of this, but even then, 34% is insane. And then when they do get a chance on offense, they can't get first bloods. 42% is horrible. I mean, like I said, we can keep going here. Defensive stats are not great either. 50%. They're getting first blood a lot, but they're not closing out with 68% win percentage. The retake percentage 25 is near the bottom of the league. So, I mean, like I said, pick your stat. They have not been good at the game mode. That's their biggest weakness. If we scroll over here and you take a look at kind of in series when they can take off map 2, you see that they have a chance in those series. But then when they lose, you see the record when they lose map 2. So need to find a way, I think, to get better in S&D. I think that's what a lot of these changes they made are focused on. I think obviously you need to kind of evolve with the respawn map pool. We're going to see some changes to split, but they need to find a way to improve in S&D. And I think that's what some of the focus was here with the changes. All right, let's start off with the first move coming from the Boston Academy team, which is Pentagram getting called up. This is basically the swap, I believe, for Asim, if we have to kind of map it from player to player. I've kind of said on stream a lot that I didn't think Asim was playing too bad. I think he's in a tough role around the mistakes that Simply makes on the map. The Ace is trying to do his best, and while he did play good on land, they decide to go in a different direction here and give Pentagram a shot. Now, I don't mind them giving, just in general, vacuum, just for a step away. Like, Pentagram's deserved a shot for a number of years now. He was an LA Thief sub quite a few years ago when their kind of roster was in flux. They didn't entertain calling him up, which was crazy. And then he kind of ended up in the Boston camp over the last couple of years, and he's been kind of patiently waiting. So I'm glad that he can kind of get his look in. And look, Pentagram's played pretty solid this split. He was probably Boston Academy's best kind of respawn player during the elite qualifiers and the elite stage itself. I think the only area maybe of concern in challengers is that he was dropping a 0.93 for the team in S&D, and we talk about Boston's S&D issues, so we'll see if he can improve on that. That was sort of the one weak spot, but in general, I think he's been very good for the Academy team, so I'm not surprised he's getting called up. And the next change for Boston is bringing back a player they had on their roster last year, which is Beans. And this is an interesting move to me. So they had Ben on their roster last year. The Boston team during the tenure that Ben was on had some great moments online. They were terrible on land, didn't play for the win. They had their ability in S&D, but respawn game modes were tragic, and Boston decided not to move on with Ben and pick up Boston. And so now they're removing that decision and going from Slasher back to Ben. Beans is a curious one for me, because if Boston rated Ben in the offseason, why didn't they keep them? So then why? I don't know. that part's still confusing to me, but I do think that Ben's actually playing, by what we can see metric wise in challengers, at least online, was playing pretty good. You see these elite stats here, and have highlighted his row here. Pretty good in respawn. But the 128 and S&D is very, very good. And that's what we've always gotten from Ben. Even when he was in the CDL last year, he was a great search player and kind of helped solve some of Boston's Game 5 issues they had. Prior to him joining the roster, the issue was him getting in trouble on the respawn side with quick decision making. And I think Ben's biggest soft skill, which is getting frustrated in maps and not calling out, not committing the troops, not really helping kind of shot call and kind of direct traffic on the map. So if he's improved on those things, made some strides on that, yeah, he can come in and be, I think, a really good player for Boston. And he's going to have to replace Austin, who's very active in the comms. But if not, it's going to put a lot on the shoulders of Priesta. It's going to put a lot on the shoulders of Pentagram if he's also going to step in that role, because we know that Snoopy is definitely also working on his comms. So there's some risk here. I kind of see the thought process from Boston for the Ben's for slasher pick. I just feel my big thing is I'm like, I'm surprised you're making this roster change, because why wouldn't they have just kept Ben over the summer? I don't know. All right, let's talk about the final change here for Boston, and that is 2 members joining the coaching staff. And by the way, also means that the Boston Academy looks like it's getting unwinded here too. So Seany is retiring and joining the coaching staff, and Magick, who was coaching their academy team or part of the coaching staff for their academy team for a decent, pretty much I think the entire tenure of the Boston Academy team, is also joining over. And prior to coaching Boston Academy, Magick was coaching like Team War and Train Hard and a bunch of other squads in the EU region. And I think these moves are to solidify, just in general, the coaching staff. And I think, listen, this kind of gets to, I think, sort of my key point when it comes to Boston, right? Let's take a look here. If I drag over and take a look at their tournament results since they've been in the league, and this is not a great kind of split here of land results, right? They had that 3rd place placing in Vanguard at, the Minnesota event, and they were looking like they were going to make finals because they were going to, LAG was making the run at that point. So, okay. Outside of that, a bunch of sort of top 8s around the board, and they were non-factor at champs. Then you go to last year, and, their best placing was the Optic event where they got 4th. But, again, they didn't really look like a team that was going to make it to a final in that event. And then outside of that, they won 1 series of champs and they got 6th. And then this year, if we scroll up, we don't have Major 2 listed, but it's been 2 dead last places. I think this Boston franchise, for the amount of money that they have pumped in, have been terrible at land. I don't care about the online results, bro. This team has done a good job winning online matches over the last couple of years, but they're never able to put it together in the moments that matter most. And to be honest, in 2.5 years, your best placings are a 3rd and a 4th, is, I don't think, very good enough. This Boston team has had squads that should be at least given FaZe or Toronto or New York or Optic a run over the last couple of years for making some of these finals. And even in like the 3rd place placing they got, it's LAG, I didn't really feel like they were really at a shot in that one. So, for me, for Boston, I think this is signaling from ownership that they're not happy with the coaching staff, they're not happy with the direction of this team over the last couple of years, and that they need to turn around their results, because if they once again really, really struggle, they don't make it to champs this year, which, by the way, we go back to this tab and go back to tracker here. You see where they're in. There's a very good shot they don't make champs this year. I just think that the Boston is going to make some massive changes. It might mean, Denz loses his job, Zed loses his job, the coaching staff, and some of the players. My last take about Boston is this. Just last kind of final thought is that all of these roster changes, the coaching staff changes, really will not make a difference if Snoopy does not work on the things he needs to work on. They have staked a lot now in really pushing out the experience that they brought in over the last 2 stages, in turn to making their team younger again, bro. Like, they went from having an experienced team with Slasher and Priesta and Asim, which was a departure from last year when the youngest team in the league, and now they brought back in inexperience from Pentagram. And I know Ben's now had 1 stint in the league, but compared to some of these other teams, you look at like FaZe, the level of experience they have, the top level, Toronto, Optic, even New York. It's a big course correction. I think this is a risky move from Boston. And again, if it doesn't work out, if Snoop doesn't really develop, he might be off the roster. And I think, unfortunately, the coaching staff as well might be losing their jobs if they don't really deliver something this. And I think, look, just kind of one, I know I keep saying my final thoughts, but I keep thinking about more stuff I want to say in this video. I think the Boston camp has sent some signals my way that they're unhappy with us spreading narratives and thinking like They're spinning a bunch of stuff about how we think we're biased. I don't know what to tell y'all, man. We have felt, and I have felt, that Boston doesn't seem to know what they're doing with roster changes since last year. And I actually really liked the changes they made this summer. I actually thought that this was a good set of changes, but they never were able to, make their previous major one team work when they had Capsule. Okay, they brought Asim in. They still couldn't make that work. And I think you're going to have to look inwards if it doesn't work at this point, and not externally and blame us for, talking about things after a roster change, bringing up information. I think that's kind of whack and crazy out of the Boston camp. And I also think I would be very curious what Slasher's side of the story is. He said nothing since he got dropped. Same with Asim. They really talked about how they got dropped. And I'm very curious kind of how that went down with the situation. Also same with Joshh as well. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of the video. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. As always, guys, we'll see you on the next one.